Fateh. Welcome to week 22 of the Japji Sahib series. We are actually 6 months through the year, which is fantastic. So that means we're halfway through the series talk. And quite timely, we've just sent out a feedback form. So we'd really appreciate if everyone can take the time out to answer the questions in the feedback form. It's quite quick and sweet. So it's really useful for us to know what things you like, what things we could do better, how we could improve, and also any other extra comments you may have about the logistics or the presentations or the speakers themselves. So please could you all take some time out to do that, and then we can take on the feedback for the remaining 6 months. It's by Gurjaran Singh today, doing week 22, so I will pass it over, but I'm not sure how the fun facts have been going while I've been. I will try and revive them. So I've got a great fun fact about Gurjaran Singh. So Gurjaran Singh, when he was 30, in terms of playing PlayStation, Xbox, and sort of all consoles, which is quite sort of popular right now as well with all the generation. But Gurjaran Singh broke the world record of playing the most amount of gaming ever in the world. So he played 30 hours non-stop of gaming. And now the record means you could take a break, get some water, get some food. But Gurjaran Singh did that without any real breaks whatsoever. So I'm not going to ask how he went to the toilet or he did anything, but 30 hours he broke the record. So over to Gurjaran Singh. Sorry, yeah, another big thing, more important than his gaming, is we have just released a fundraiser video and a message on the Instagram for the Seven Sisters hike. So this would be a really good opportunity for all the Sangha to get together across the UK. Seven Sisters, I'm not sure if everyone's been there, I haven't, but I've heard and seen that it looks absolutely amazing. So it'll be a hike for everyone to get involved with. Bring your friends, bring your families. It's about 3 to 4 hour walk. If you don't want to do the walk, you can just turn up for the Kirtan as well. We'll have all the Parchariks from basics attending. So we will have Simran, we will have Kirtan, and we will have talks from various Parchariks. So hopefully it will be a fantastic event. It's on the 12th of August. So Guru's Kirpa, the weather will be fantastic as well. It will be a whole day event. We'll be providing transport and coaches and food and snacks, but please do come to it. It should be fantastic. Go and do a fundraiser yourself as well. There's a small admin fee and a small sort of sum you need to raise. All donations will go to basics of Sikhi and everything's 13. Thank you very much. WhyGuru Ji ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji ki Fateh.
WhyGuru Ji ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji ki Fateh. So just to clear up that fun fact, I was about 17 years old. And it's a bit embarrassing. This is why I probably shouldn't tell fun things about me to the Singhs. I was 17 and my parents said, we're going to go to Coventry to visit my family. And at that time, I was doing my A-levels. So I said to them, I might stay home. I've got a lot of work to do. And literally, I remember, I don't know how I remember it so clearly, but as soon as they left the door, I was like, bye. And I ran upstairs and I just put my Xbox on, Gears of War 2, and literally, I didn't plan to play for 30 hours. I was literally just playing and playing, and I thought, right, I need some food. I'll start the next game, run downstairs, put my food in the oven, run back upstairs, and somehow for 30 hours I played. And it wasn't like an official record. It just when I searched up, I thought, oh, what's the longest before that? And somehow it beaten it. So yeah, I think now the record's 150 hours or something, which is mental. But there are 10-minute breaks every hour, so it's kind of cheating. So before we start, if we'd like to just all do a more mantra just to focus our minds. Ik oankar Satnam Karta Purkh Nirbhau Nirvair Akal Murta Ajuni Sapang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jug Ad Sach Hai Pi Sach Nanak Hosi Pi Sach Gyan Dhyan Kich Karm Na Jana Sar Na Jana Teri Sab Te Vadda Sat Guru Nanak Jin Kal Rakhi Meri Gyan Dhyan Kich Karm Na Jana Sar Na Jana Teri Sab Te Vadda Sat Guru Nanak Jin Kal Rakhi Meri. So just as a recap, over the last 3 weeks we've been covering the Asank Bodhiya. So this is where Guruji has told us things like there's countless people who have love for WhyGuruji, countless people who do slandering, nindya, countless names of WhyGuruji. And at the end of each one of those Bodhiya, Guru Sahib finishes with the same few lines of Kudrat Kavarna Kaha Vichar, Varya Na Java Ekvar, Jo Tud Pave Sai Palikar, Tu Sada Salamat Nirankar. So saying that, WhyGuruji, how can I describe your power? that I can't even describe just one hair of yours. And that whatever you decide to do, that is good. And that your form is immovable, right? It stays the same. We may change, but WhyGuru Ji, they stay the same all the time. And so the Siddhs then asked Guru Nanak Dev Ji, they said that you said without meditating on that name of WhyGuru Ji, that we can't become the form of WhyGuru and have a pure mind. And the Siddhs say, well, what about those that have impure minds? How can they become pure? And Guruji then uses a series of analogies, examples, to explain how can we become pure. So Guruji starts by saying, Pariye hat pair tana dehe. So to say that when our heart, our hands, our pair, our feet, and our dehe, our body, pariye, become filled, done with dirt. Right, so when our hands, feet, our body get dirty, Guruji then tells us how is it that we clean them. So just a question to the Sangat first. When our hands do get dirty, like in this photo, how would we clean them? What's the typical way? Hanji, water. Thanks so much, Hanji. So Guruji says, Pani totte uttara sukhe. So to say totte, that we wash Pani with water, and that ke, that dirt, uttar lifts so from those hands, from those feet, from that body, right? So we wash with water, and then that dirt gets lifted. Then Guruji says, Moot paliti kappad hoye. That when our kappad, our clothes, hoye, become paliti, polluted with moot, with urine. Right? So when our clothes get stained. And before we go on to what Guru Nanak Dev Ji said, what is it that we normally do when our clothes get stained, when we have a bit of an accident? Wash them, Hanji. Do we wash them with anything? You feel like we've got really dirty clothes. Is it just with water we wash them, or anything else? Hanji? Soap, Hanji. So that's exactly what Guruji says. They say, De sabun leye o hotowe. So de, then, towe, we wash, oho, that clothes, right? Whatever's got dirty. Leye, using sabun, using soap, right? So when our clothes get dirty, they get stained, then with soap, we can then clean them. And then Guruji says, Pariye mat papa ke sang. So the real point that we're getting to with the Siddhs. They said that when our mat, when our mind, pariye, becomes filled, ke sang, with papa, with sin. So when our minds are filled with that dirt of our sins, and Guruji tells us what the solution is, oho tope nave ke rang. That tope, we wash, oho, we wash that mind with the rang, with the color, but also this rang can mean love, right? With the love, ke, of, nave, nam. So when our minds are filled with that dirt of sins, then we clean our mind with the love of Nam. That we read Gurbani, we remember WhyGuruji's name, we remember our Gurus. And sometimes people have this question that when I try to read Bart, when I try and do Simran, when I try and focus, I get all these thoughts that are coming into my mind. Some of them really, really bad thoughts. And if we look back to the example that Guruji gave about the clothes, that when we have dirty clothes and we wash them, where does the dirt go? It doesn't disappear, right? The dirt starts to float to the top. And that same way, when we walk in this path of spirituality and we try and meditate and we try and purify our mind, the dirt that's inside of our minds comes to the top. It rises. And this is just what has to happen for our minds to become pure. So the Siddhs say to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, okay, you've told us how those that are impure, the sinners, can become pure by remembering that name, by having that love of the name of WhyGuru Ji. But then they say, how many people then have gone from being sinners, from having impure minds, to becoming saints, pure? Guruji says, Punni papi akhananahe. They say akhananahe, that Guruji is saying that I cannot say how many papi, sinners, have become punni, good. That there's so many, countless and countless of those that have become good from being sinners. And we've heard in the previous weeks, for example, by Manpreet Singh Ji, they told us the Sakhi about Sajjan Tug. That innkeeper who said he was religious, that they pretended to be some holy person. They had a mandir on one side, they had a mosque on the other side, and they said, come to my house, you can have a place to stay. But at night time, he would just kill people, right? Hundreds, throwing them down the well. And then Bhai Rohanveer Singh talked about the Sakhi Balmeek as well. And Gurbani tells us as well, they say, Patit Puneet Asang Hohe Har Charani Manalag. They say that Asang Hohe, that there are countless and countless of those that have become puneet, pure, from being patita, from being sinners. And how have they become this? They say, Har Charani Manalag, by focusing their minds on the feet of WhyGuru Ji. And then that Bani continues and say, At Sartira Tanam Prabh Jis Nanaka Mastak Pag. They say that the Naam of WhyGuru Ji, that is the At Sartirat. That is the 68 places of pilgrimage. That many people would try and go to all of these 68 places with the belief that once they go there, they become pure. But Guruji is saying, just with the Naam of WhyGuru Ji, Gurbani, the name of WhyGuru, that is getting the fruits of those 68 places of pilgrimage. But they say, Jis Nanaka Mastak Pag. But only those that have the bag, the fortune, written on their mustak, on their forehead. And we may be thinking, we can't become saints. These are like only for like the crazy high people, right? But the thing is, we all have that mustak on our forehead. We all have that fortune on our forehead because we're sitting here in the sanctuary of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, right? We know about Simran. We know about what our Guruji tells us is right and wrong. We know how to connect to that Naam. So just one story, one Sakhi of somebody who was a sinner who became a saint was of somebody called Chandramani. And she went by the name of Ganika. And Ganika was a prostitute who basically sold her body to men for money. And one day there was a saint who came into the town. And this saint, he rarely ever came into the town. He would normally stay in the outskirts. But on this particular day, they came into the town. And it was raining so heavily, they became drenched. And they were shivering so much in the cold that you could hear their teeth grinding against each other from being that cold. And they thought, right, we need to find some shelter. Because they also had a parrot with them as well in a cage. And so they came to this area where there were a bunch of houses where prostitutes used to stay. And all of their lights were off, apart from one. Because they thought, no one's going to come today, it's raining, I'm going to have no customers. But the one house that had the light on was Ganika. She had that hope that she might be able to make some money. So he knocked on her door, and when she opened it with a smile, thinking that I've got a customer. But as he came in, he said, "O Tiye, O daughter, I'm looking for a place to stay for myself and my parrot." And when she heard the word Tiye, daughter, she was shook because nobody had called her daughter in the house before. And she said that, "Do you need a place to stay overnight?" And he said, "O Tiye, O daughter, yes, I would. That this soul is just a fraction of the Supreme Soul. And that this body houses that soul. And so if I look after the body, then we can walk this path of righteousness." And his words were so pure, he was speaking so sweetly, that she said, "Are you a saint?" And he said, "Yes, I am a saint. I was made a saint by my master. My master said to repeat the name of that one that is the giver, and that giver is my master." And she thought to herself that no good man has ever come into my house. No good man has ever stopped me from doing these sinful acts that I've been doing. And so she said to him that, "Can I get you some dry clothes? Because I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to serve a saint again." So she went and got some dry clothes. She then put on the fire so then he could dry out with the heat. And she fell at his feet and said that, "I'm such a sinner. That please forgive me, please bless me. Day and night I do sins. Day and night I commit acts I shouldn't be doing." And hearing a plea like this, the saint said to her, "Here, have my parrot. This parrot that he loved so dearly." He said, "What I want you to do is every single morning, wake up early, bathe, and then teach this parrot to say Ram Ram, the name of WhyGuru." And so she did just this. every morning, she would wake up and she would say Ram Ram to this parrot to try and teach it to say Ram. And over time, her spiritual state started to increase. She left this occupation of being a prostitute and her tongue started to become pure. Just like Gurbani says, Naam kahet Govind ka suchi pei rasana. That when we say the Naam of Govind, of WhyGuru Ji, then our rasana, our tongue, starts to become pure. And one day, there's a snake that managed to get its way inside the cage of the parrot. And he bit the parrot, and the parrot died. And when she came down in the morning, she thought, parrot's a bit quiet today. And she put her hand in thinking that he was asleep, and the snake bit her as well. And she said, Ram, Ram, and then her last breath left her body. And she went to Sachkhand. So she was liberated. So there was two things here. One is that she went from being a sinner to a saint and reached Sachkhand by focusing on the name of Ram, Ram, of WhyGuru. But also, look what she did in her last breaths. She was saying Ram, Ram. She was remembering WhyGuru Ji. So then there's another meaning as well of this Bhakti of Punni Papi Akrananahe. That Akrananahe, that Guruji is saying that I cannot say how many people who were good, who were Punni, who actually then became sinners, who became Papi. And there's one example that we'll go through later of a Jamal, who was a Brahmin, who was seen as a high priest. And because they didn't remember the name of WhyGuru Ji, they became a well-known sinner. Then Guruji says, Kar kar karna likh la jaho. So kar, by doing and doing, karna, actions. So as we do and do actions with our own hands, then all of that is likh, right? It's written. And Gurbani, Guruji tells us that we have two beings that sit on each of our shoulders. We have Chitta and Gupta. And they write down everything that happens. So some people say they write down, one writes down what happens in the morning, one's in the evening. Some say one's conscious, one's unconscious. But either way, they write down everything we do. And then this lekha, this writings, is then le jaho, is taken away to Dharamraj. So when we leave this body, these writings are taken to Dharamraj, that being that WhyGuru Ji is given the responsibility to look at all of our actions and then decide where do we go. And later on in Japji side we hear as well, Gav hai chit gupta likh jana hai, likh likh dharma vichare. That even these Chit Gupta, these two beings, even they sing the praises of WhyGuru Ji. And then Guruji says this Bhakti, which is such a powerful Bhakti that we can implement every single moment of our day. Guruji says, Ape bij, ape hi khaho. So ape, that you yourself, bij, plant. You plant a seed. You yourself plant that seed, and then ape hi, only yourself, khaho. Eat the fruits of that seed. Eat what comes out of that seed. So Guruji is saying that whatever we plant, whatever we sow, we reap the rewards of that, whether negative or positive. So it's a very simple method Guruji has given us, that if we plant the seeds of lying, of not telling the truth, we're not going to get a nice mango tree. That if we plant the seeds of being judgmental to other people, of not being compassionate, we're not going to get a nice apple tree. But if we plant the seeds of truth, contentment, compassion, love and humility, then we'll get the most beautiful tree. And so there's a few sakya just to illustrate how it is that what we do, we actually receive the consequences of those. So this first sakya is of the sparrow and the hawk. So there was this Hindu priest, and he was a vegetarian. And he had heard the praises of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. He thought, wow, I've got to go see this Guru. And so he thought, right, I'm going to go to the city of Anandpur Sahib. And when he got there, he saw Guru Gobind Singh Ji was standing there. In one hand, he had a hawk, and in the other hand, he had a sparrow. And what he saw then shook him, surprised him. He saw that hawk just take a chunk out of that sparrow, right? Both alive. And then that hawk took another bite of the sparrow, and then a third bite. And he thought to himself that, how is Guruji letting this happen? His Shraddha, his faith in Guruji started to waver. He thought, where is Guru Sahib's mercy that he's just letting a hawk just bite into a sparrow continuously? And Guru Gobind Singh Ji, being Antarjami, meaning the inner knower of our minds and of our hearts, he said to that Hindu priest, Shall I tell you the answer to get rid of your doubt? To get rid of this question in your mind? And Guru Gobind Singh Ji said that this hawk in its previous life was a landowner. And the sparrow was an advisor to the king. And what happened is this advisor to the king started abusing the power he had. And he put false taxes on this landowner. And he essentially drove that landowner out of the city. So that landowner had to take his family, his friends, and set up completely new in a brand new city. But the advisor didn't stop there. He then went to that next city, put more taxes on him, and drove him out of that town as well. And then he drove him out of another town after that. And Guruji said that eventually these two people died, the landowner and the advisor. And what was meant to happen is that the landowner was going to be the hawk and the advisor is going to be the sparrow. And that hawk was going to go give the consequences of the actions of that advisor, the sparrow, for 3 lifetimes. That he was going to eat at him and eat at him. But Guru Gobind Singh Ji said that because they came to my sanctuary, they only have to go through this for 1 lifetime now. So this is just one example of Ape Bij, Ape Hi Kaho, that advisor had to suffer the consequences of what he did. And he was eaten by that hawk. And then there's another Sakhi. This photo is well known for anyone who goes to India. That there was somebody called King Aj. And this king, he was in his horse stables with his servants. They were just inspecting the horses, see if they're looking okay, seeing if they're healthy. And then a saint comes and goes to that king that, please can you give me an offering? I want some food. And that king in anger said that, can you not see where I am? That you're asking me for food and offering, and you can see I'm standing here in a stable. Like, you're choosing the wrong time here. What do you expect me to give you? He said, the only thing I've got here is just horse manure. And that saint said, don't get angry. Whatever you fancy, just give me that as an offering. And so still in that anger, that king grabbed 2 pieces of horse manure and gave it to that saint. And that saint said that these will sprout like a seed. And he went home. And that saint outside of his house, he put that horse manure outside and he went in. And after a few days, the king went past that saint's house and he saw there was a huge pile of horse manure there. And he went to that saint and he said, you haven't even got any horses. Where are you getting all this manure from? And the saint said, just like I said, that they were going to sprout like seeds. You gave me this as an offering, and now all of this is going to go back to you. And that king realized he'd made a mistake. And he said to the saint that, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I shouldn't have given you this as an offering. Please tell me, what do I do now so this doesn't all come back to me? Please, how can you bless me? And the saint said that, firstly, you're going to have to spread gossip about yourself in the whole city. And then all those people that are going to slander you, they're going to come and take some of this manure, what was meant to be for you. And then he said, but you need to keep 2 piles of horse manure because you gave me 2 piles, and you're going to have to now, bit by bit, every day, eat those 2 horse piles of manure. And so the king did this, and he didn't get the punishment. That all that manure was going to go back to him. But again, this shows Ape Bij, Ape Hi Kaho, that he gave that saint 2 piles of manure to eat for food. And what ended up happening? That came back to him. That he had to eat it as food. And then there's another Sakhi. It's quite a few, but they're quite interesting. There's one of Raja Dhritarashtra. But 80% of my prep was actually just trying to pronounce his name. Proper hard. So there's this king, and he was a great king, right? He was blind though, and he was quite spiritual in that he could see his 100 last lives. And he said and what happened is that there was a big battle, and the battle of, what's the battle called again? Mahabharat, that's it. In the battle of Mahabharat, so you can see here with all the dev there, in that battle of Mahabharat, all of his 100 sons were killed. And he went to Krishnji afterwards, he said, what did I do to deserve this? Why did 100 of my sons die? And why was I born blind? And he said that I looked in my last 100 lives and I couldn't see a single thing that I did in order to deserve this. And Krishnaji said that you didn't look in your last 107th life. And he said in that life, what you did is that you had a lizard in your hand. And you took a thorn from a plant and you poked out the lizard's eyes, both of them, making it blind. And now in this life, you became blind. You were born blind. And he said, in terms of your sons, they all died as well because of your actions. He said that in that same life, you love to eat meat, right? You love this kind of food. And he said that one day you wanted a brand new meal, and you said to your hunters, you said to your archers, go find me a brand new meal. And in that land, there was 100 swanlings. And both of their parents, the two swans, they'd migrated temporarily for a little bit. And when the hunters found these 100 swanlings, they grabbed one of the swanlings, took it back, had it cooked, and served to that king. And he said that it was so tasty that I want this every single day now. And so for the next 99 days, one by one, these swanlings were cooked for food. And when the swans came back and realized what had happened, that they were being eaten by this person, they then cursed him to say that your 100 children are now going to be killed. And what ended up happening? Their 100 sons were killed in this war. Bare cute as well. How can you kill that? And then the last of these series of Sakya, Ape Bij, Ape Kaho, there was a rishi called Rishi Mandav. And he was meditating one day in the jungles. He was just minding his own business. And then a thief came. The thief didn't come to take anything from him. The thief came and gave him a pearl necklace. So this rishi was like, thank you very much. Put that on. And then a short while after, the soldiers of the king came and said, there's the pearl necklace. And they captured him and took him to the king. And they put him in front of the king and said, we found your thief. This is the person that took your pearl necklace. And that rishi is like, I didn't do anything. I was given this pearl necklace. But nobody believed him, understandably. Nobody believed that he didn't steal it. And the king said, now I want this person to be tortured to death. And this rishi, being spiritual as well, he could see his last 100 lives. He looked back to think, what could I have possibly done to deserve being tortured to death for something that I didn't even do? And he couldn't find anything. And when he'd been tortured to death, when he went to Dharmaraj, he asked Dharmaraj, what did I do to deserve to be tortured to death? And he said that if you look at your 101st previous life, he says, when you were a child, you had a grasshopper in your hands. And whilst that grasshopper was alive, you were actually plucking the legs one by one of that grasshopper. And for that reason, you actually had to suffer this. And when I heard this Saki, it was really strange. I had like a flashback to when I was about maybe 8 years old or something. I was on a school trip, and I remember seeing someone who was in my class sitting there with like an insect, and he was literally pulling the legs off whilst it was alive. And I remember it so clearly because I was just so shocked. And it's really strange how just hearing this Saki, I just thought back to when I was like 8 years old. So don't know what's going to happen to him. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji finishes with Nanak hukami avahu jahu. That Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying that by hukam, right, the order of WhyGuru Ji is, the law that they've made is that our actions that we do in this life, we're going to have to face the consequences of them, good or bad. And we're going to have to avahu jahu, come and go in this 8.4 million life cycle, depending on what we do, depending on our actions. And what's interesting is it's not only what we do within our lives, but Guruji talks about what happens in our last moments. That what we remember in our last moments also determines what life form we come back as. And there's a Shabad in Guru Granth Sahib Ji that talks about the various things that if we think about these things in our last moments, what animal or what being we'd actually come back to in the next life. And we're just going to go through these in the form of a quiz. So the first pankti is Antakal jo Lakshmi simare, aisi chinta mein hai je mare. So Antakal, in your end time, so the time of your death, jo Lakshmi simare, that those who remember Lakshmi, wealth, aisi chinta mein hai, that in this thinking, je mare, if they die, then Guruji tells us actually, what do they come back as? And so we've got a few options, and I'm going to talk about each one of these to confuse you as much as possible. So are they going to come back as a tree? So maybe the paper from the tree to make money. Are they going to come back as a snake? Because a snake burns inside from greed. Are they going to come back as a squirrel? Because a squirrel like gathers all the nuts, right? Or are they going to come back as a beggar? Because the beggar always thinks about money. can see all the things laughing at me here. So, I gave the answer. So, for anybody who didn't see that, what do you think it is? Put your hands up for tree. Thank you, Sukhdeep Singh. Hands up for snake. Hands up for squirrel. And hands up for beggar. One more thing. Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. Sympathy vote. So the answer was snake, for those who didn't see it. So Sarpajon Vala Vala Otere. So Guruji says that they come in the June in the being of a snake. Again and again. So the next one, Antakal Jo Istri Simare, Aisi Chinta Mehe Jemare. That for those people in their end time who think about Istriya, so thinking essentially about the opposite gender, what happens to them? So the options are, without skipping to the answer, so A, the opposite gender, B, a prostitute, C, a rock, or D, a pony. So hands up for the opposite gender. If you think about the opposite gender, you're going to come back as the opposite gender. It was one of the random options. So these things asking why there's a pony on there. It's just one of the options. Throw people off. Hands up for opposite gender. Okay. Hands up for prostitute. Okay, there's quite a few. Hand up for a rock. Hand up for a pony. So the answer is actually a prostitute. So Besava John Valvala Otere. That if we remember the opposite gender, we're going to come back as a prostitute in the next life. And the next one, Antakal Jo Ladke Simre, Aisi Chinta Mehe Jemare. That in the last moments, if we think about our children, what do we come back as? So we have your children's child. So you think about your children so much that you come back as one of their children. A cat, they have large litters. A pig, always spending time with the little piglets. Or a fish that can have loads of children, will have hundreds of eggs. So hands up for your children's child. Okay, we've got one. A cat. One. A pig. Oh, you guys are too good, man. And a fish. Okay, a couple for fish. So the answer is pigs. Sukarajon valvala otere. That you come back again and again as a pig. Then we have Antakal Jo Mandir Simare, Aisi Chinta Mehe Jemare. That if we think of Mandir, so not the Hindu place of worship, but actually like our house, like our mansions, for those lucky enough to have mansions. So the options are a ghost, a housefly, a tree, so maybe for building timber in the house, or clay, which is what like bricks are made up of. So hands up for a ghost. Hands up for a housefly. Hands up for a tree. And hands up for clay. Okay, so the answer here is a ghost. Right, you're going to come back again and again as a ghost. Casper the ghost. So, just the final one of all of these. Antakal Narayana Simare Aisi Chinta Mehe Jemare. So, in that last moment, if we remember Narayan, another name for WhyGuru, if we have our last moments remembering of WhyGuru, then Badr Tate Lochana Te Nar Mukta Pitambar Vake Hriday Basa. So if we think about WhyGuru in our last moments, then Bhagat Trilochan, who wrote this Shabad, they say that person achieves liberation. And that WhyGuru resides in their heart always. And just a Sakhi, just to finish on this, which links really nicely with this Shabad, is that of a Jamal, like I mentioned earlier on. So a Jamal, they were the son of a Brahmin. So those that saw themselves as the highest priests. And their father was a minister for the king and also a royal priest for the king. And when a Jamal reached the age of 5 years old, their father put them to studying. Right, so they were studying, and they were really good. Right, anything they were taught, they'd learn, and they learned everything off by heart. And they were so good, in fact, that they fit 20 years of studying in just 10 years. And there were scholars from around the city who would come to see him just because they'd heard how good of a student he was. And then one day he asked his teacher, who he called his guru, he said, how long have I got left to study? And the guru said, you've got 4 years left. You still need to study the Vedas and the Upanishads, so these spiritual scriptures. And he said, but one thing also you need to do is that whenever you come and go from class, I want you to go around the town. Never go through the town. And Ajamal said, why can't I go through the town? And his guru said, don't ask questions, just believe me and just listen to what I'm saying. Just do as you're told. So for the next few years, Ajamal listened to what he was told. He always went round the town. And when he reached around the age of 20 years old, he thought, I've nearly finished my studying now. Let me see actually what all this fuss is about, right? Why is my guru so worried? Why can't I go through the town? So he goes through the town one day. And when he goes through the town, he experiences sounds, colors, things that he'd never experienced before. And he even saw places where on a balcony, there were women, there were prostitutes who were calling men to do sinful actions. And when he reached home, his mind was going crazy, right? His mind wouldn't settle. He couldn't focus on his studies. And he thought, right, I'll go to bed. He couldn't even sleep because his mind was just going round and round. And when he went to class the next day, the teacher said to him, did you even sleep? Your eyes are so red. And Ajamal said, yes, I did sleep. And he said, you haven't been going through the town, have you? And Ajamal said, no, I haven't gone through the town. So not only has he now gone against his guru's teachings, but he's also lied to his guru now. And throughout that whole class, he still couldn't concentrate. And so after that class, he then carried on going through the town. And one day, there was a 17-year-old girl who grabbed his arm and they did a sinful act. Right? Again, is another prostitute. And after that, he kept on doing the same thing again and again. And eventually, his teacher followed him home one day. And he found out what he was doing in the forest. Right? He found out what sinful acts he was doing. And the next time Ajamal came to class, his teacher told him, your studying is complete now. You don't need to come back. You're finished. And then he contacted his father and he said that get him married as soon as you can. So his father got him married to a very virtuous, a very good wife. But he continued doing these things. And his father eventually passed away. And now Ajamal, he became the royal priest and he became the minister. But he'd fallen in love now with this woman and everybody knew about it. Even the king. And the king found out and he called him to his darbar and he said, what are you doing? You've got a wife and you've got a child now. And you're getting up to these things. And Ajamal said that, I can't, I'm helpless. I don't know what to do. I've fallen in love and I don't know what to do. And the king said, right, all of your wealth now is going to go to your wife and to your child. He said, you're no longer the royal priest. That has been stripped from you and now you're banished from this kingdom. You have to go live in the forests. So he then had to, he went to the forest with the woman that he was involved in. And her name was Kalavanti. And they had to live in the forest very difficultly. It was very hard. He had to find all of his food. He had to hunt for his food. And then she would then cook it when he would come home. And it was only meat they could eat. And they'd had 7 children eventually. And the last child, they named him Narayan. And after they had the 7th child, they both realized that what have we been doing? We've been sinning so much. We did so many wrong actions. How could we have done this? And they both wanted to get forgiven, right? They both wanted to repent and get blessed. And Galavanti, the girl he's involved with, every day she would see saints and sadhus walk past the house. And she was hoping that, why can't one of them just come to my house and bless me and save us? And one day this actually happened. 2 sadhus came and they said, we need shelter. Yeah, we need some food. And she was so happy, but at the same time, she was actually so sad. Because they had come, but she had nothing to offer them. Right? They were vegetarian. They only had meat. So she told Ajamal, don't hunt today, don't bring any meat. Let's cook them some rock sugar and boiled nuts. And they did this, and then they said to the sadhus that we've made so many mistakes, please save us. Please bless us. We don't know what we can do. We have no other options. And the sadhus, they looked at what they'd done in the past, and they said that you're actually very blessed because your 7th child was named Narayan. And what I want you to do is to always call Narayan. Because if you continue calling and calling Narayan, eventually that one Narayan will hear your call. And so Ajamal, every day, they would call out for their seventh son. Come and have food, Narayan. Come and have dudh. Come and have milk, Narayan. And one day, Ajamal got sick, became very seriously ill. And he could tell that his end time was coming now. And he could see the Jamdoots were coming. And he had a glimpse of hell. And at that time, he did what he was most used to, and he called out Narayan for his son. But when those Jamdoots heard the name of WhyGuru, of Narayan, they ran away. And he actually ended up going to Sachkhand. So, again, look at that somebody who was viewed as such a big sinner was actually saved. They went to Sachkhand. And in the last moments, he remembered WhyGuru, right? Narayan. Just like that Pankti said, in the last moments, those who remember Narayan, that WhyGuruji resides in their heart and they are liberated. And just on a reflection of actually how we can implement these things, that for many of us, we may be thinking, I've made so many mistakes, that I've sinned so much. You know, I make mistakes every day. And the thing is, sometimes we think, you know what, we're never ever going to become a saint. We can never be forgiven, right? We've done so many bad things. But if we think back at those Sakya, can any one of us really say that we've murdered more than 100 people? Probably not, right? But yet Sajjan Tug was forgiven. They became a saint. Can any of us say that we've eaten multiple human beings by doing cannibalism? Probably not. But Gaudar Akash, they did. And they were forgiven. And they became a saint. So it doesn't matter what we've done or what we think we've done, that we can still become a saint. We can be forgiven. But sometimes we torture ourselves by thinking, what have I done? How can I become a saint? How can I be forgiven? But just remember, Guru Nanak Dev Ji will forgive us no matter what. That when we ask for that forgiveness and when we truly want to walk a path of spirituality, then we can do so. And the other thing is that when we make a sin, that when we make a mistake, we can choose. We either see it as a mistake and always think, what have I done? What have I done? Or we could choose to learn from that mistake. Because when we learn from a mistake, it stops being a mistake and it becomes a lesson, right? That we can think, how did I get myself in that situation? And then actually, how I can prevent it in the future. And for many people, it's actually Sangat, right? That when they do negative actions, whether it's, sometimes, you may end up doing drugs or, drinking heavily and things like this. But if we look at where it came from, it's often actually because we've been tempted by the Sangat that we're around. And so if we made a mistake and maybe we did drugs or something like that, then we think actually what led to it was actually being around with the wrong people. And instead of it being just a mistake that we continually regret, we can think, you know what? I'm going to learn from this and use it as a lesson. That I'm going to change my Sangat. And be around those people who have those qualities of love, humility, contentment, truth, and compassion. Because then we'll start to be like them as well. And lastly, for that same reason, let's not judge other people as well. That you can think that when we've made a mistake, if we can imagine how we would feel if Guru Sahib or somebody, WhyGuru said, you've made this mistakes, you don't deserve to be forgiven. How dare you do that? How could you have done that? How could you have done that sin? But yet, at the same time, sometimes we do that to other people. That we just see something in the face of it and we think, how could you have done that? And we'll treat them in a certain way. But if we treat people how we would want to be treated, then actually the world would be so much more of a beautiful place. And there's a reason as well, I heard this recently, there's a reason why the front windscreen of our car is so big and why our rear view mirror is very small. It's because we're not meant to focus on where we've come from, we should be looking at actually where we're going, right? And so just as a recap, that Guruji told us, how do we purify ourselves? They use various examples. If our hands, feet, our body get dirty, wash them with water. If our clothes get dirty, wash them with soap. And if our mind feels dirty, then actually we can wash it with the love of Naam, of Gurbani, of remembering our Guru, of remembering WhyGuruji's name. And Guruji tells us that there are countless and countless sinners, people who have made mistakes, who have become saints. And it's the same for us as well, that we can become like those saints. And Guru Nanak Ji said, we reap what we sow. So what we do, the actions that we do, we're going to experience the consequences of those, good or bad. So let's just be so conscious of what we're doing every day, how we're talking to people, how we're treating people. Because if we do good, we're going to get good back. If we do bad, we're only going to get bad back. Not a bad back, as in it's going to come back to you. So please forgive me for the many mistakes I've made, and hopefully you can bless me to learn from these mistakes. WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh. Is there any vichar or any questions?
I think I'll get started off then. One of the things actually said to me, you know, when you were telling all the stories about the insects, that I've killed loads of insects in my life, so they're a bit worried. What should they do then?
No, I'm the same. I remember like when I was a kid, I was like stamping on ants, and I'm thinking now, what was I doing? I thought it was a game, and but it's like I was saying, if we truly think, you know what, I made a mistake, like Guruji, please forgive me. Right? We can't just say, you know what, I'm gonna do a bad thing, and then I'm just gonna expect forgiveness, right? But if we realize that we just didn't know, we were in ignorance. That's what it was when we were a kid, right? I didn't know that stepping on ants was a bad thing. When we were a kid, you know, picking legs off things, we might not have realized it was a bad thing. But actually, when we say from our heart, Guruji, I made a mistake, right? That please keep me on this path, and I've learned from my mistake. I'm not going to do the same again. Then again, there's so many stories where we'll get forgiven, and we can progress on that path of spirituality.
I'll ask another question. Most of the sins that I've done in the past or I've heard from other people have been when we think no one's watching or when we've been alone. What advice would you give to somebody in that situation?
Well, it's like we were saying that those two beings that are on our left and right shoulder, right, Jeta Gopata, right, they're always writing down what we're doing. And even though we think sometimes, we're by ourselves, we can get away with things, like Guruji's always watching, right? That I can't remember the Bhakti, but our Guru is always with us, right? Sadguru Pyara Mere Naal Hai, right? They're always with us, right? The Sadguru. So if we just remember that Guruji is always with us, they are angsang, they're closer than our own limbs. Then when we're doing actions, we'll maybe think twice about it, right? And especially for those that are wearing like gagard and stuff, that when we're going to do an action, we remember that, look, this is the arm of the Guru, right? And hopefully we can wear it on, but sometimes we put it on our most dominant arm, but I put it on both because I know I'll just cheat otherwise and do it with my non-dominant arm. So like if we put it on both arms, then, it will remind us of our Guru. Any other questions?
I've just got one question. What if you've committed a sin and you can't forgive yourself for it?
That's a really good question. And something I heard recently as well is that if one of our friends or family members had committed a sin, right, we would say to them, you know what, it's a mistake, right? Just move forward, right? Sometimes we treat other people different from how we treat ourselves. We may speak with so much love, so much care for other people, but when we make a mistake, we're like, oh, stupid this, stupid that, how did you do this? But actually what we should do is try and treat ourselves like we do other people, right? Because sometimes we can become overly critical of ourselves. And when we do it in this way, then actually we just bring ourselves down. And we get more and more down, and we reduce our confidence, reduce our self-esteem, and we just go into a bad place. But again, like I was saying, like, just think of it as a lesson, right? We can leave it as a mistake and remember it as a mistake, or we can think, you know what, these hardships actually make us into who we are, right? And these hardships that we've been through, when it comes to our kids, for example, or other people, because we've been through these things, we're actually now in a place to help them not make the same mistake. So sometimes we can see it as a sin and what have I done, but we can also look at it also as in like a bit of a blessing as well, that now I can help other people. Is that okay, G?
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, do you want to add to that?
Hello.
Goodbye. Just 1 second, let me speak and then you can speak afterwards. Vijay's answer was great. Everything they said, 100%. Just to add to that, another angle that you can look at it with is that we're the sinner and Guru Sahib is the forgiver. Kind of rhymes as well, right? So we say like, "Aho papi tum bakshanahar," right? That I'm the sinner and you're the forgiver. So one way we can look at it is that like we put that faith in our Guru. We don't focus on ourselves. We think that, my Guru, if Guru Bani says my Guru is bakshanahar, my Guru will forgive anything, and that I'm a papi and they are the one that makes me pavitra, that makes me pure, then do you know what I mean? We kind of take ourselves out of the equation and we think about a guru. You know that my guru can forgive anyone. But if Gurbani is saying it, then it has to be true. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes whatever he said was perfect, but just to give a different angle to it as well is that sometimes just forget about the individual and start thinking about your guru. There's no one like my guru. My guru's forgiven everyone. Like he's given examples, right? So that's just another way to look at it as well for the guru. ठीक है जी? Hello. You go back.
How come it was like the people who could look back on their lives? How come it was maximum 100?
I have no idea. It was a common thing. You can ask.
Hello. Okay. So it depends on their avastha, their spiritual state, right? So they'd reach such a state where they're able to see 100 lives back. Do you get it? So you'll see later on that comes in Patal, that there are certain beings that have such powers, they're able to see certain worlds or certain things, but they can't see the complete truth. Like if this room was dark right now, and there's an elephant in the middle of the room, don't know how we're going to get an elephant in here, but the point is that different people can, touch the elephant, and someone can feel the leg, someone can feel the trunk, the tail. Everybody has a different idea of the elephant, right? Someone said the elephant is smooth, someone says it's thin, someone says it's big, right? Everybody has a level of gyan, but there's some people that have the complete truth. Does that make sense? Right, so we're limited to how much we know, but the more we start to search, the more we're able to know. Right, so they were only able to know 100 lives back, but they met somebody who knew more than 100 lives, and they would tell them no, it's the 107th life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hanji, I'm going to pass thing at the back.
Yeah, I've got a question from a viewer at home. How do you know if you've been forgiven?
It's a good question. But I think if we just have that faith that Guru Sahib forgives us, then that's all we can do. Right? We just got to have that faith, and just by listening to the Sakya as well, it actually helps us. Because if I didn't hear any of these Sakya, right, and I did something really bad, I'd be like, how's Guru Nanak ever going to forgive me? When you hear these Sakya and you think, you know what, Guruji does forgive people, and forgive people who, like, on a relative basis, you could think have done much worse than me, right? So that's why it's so important actually to listen to Sakya, listen to the history of our Gurus, and we realize that if they can forgive them, and if we truly ask for forgiveness from our heart, then we have that faith that Guru Sahib has forgiven us. You know, Adam?
Anji, that was good what VG is saying. Just to add to that, if you look at Japji Sahib, there's this vichar that kach pakai othe pai, right? That whether somebody's made it or not, you'll find out there, right? Nana gaya jape ja, utte jaake jape he means to know. Jape doesn't just mean japanaine. So it's there you find out. So what we could do for now, unless you already get Jivan Mukta now, you become liberated whilst alive, then obviously you've been forgiven because you're already liberated, right? But for us, when it comes to this idea of how do we know all that kind of vichar, right? We know, what we've been told by Guru Gobind Singh Ji is that if you go to Panch Pyare, and you give your head to Panch Pyare, and you follow what the Panch Pyare say to you, then you'll be mukt, you'll be liberated. So in that case, like the stories that he's told, they had a guru that are isht in most of the cases, right? They had the Sikhi, they followed that, that's all they worried about. They just followed the hukam. So for us, if whoever's saying it, for us as a Sikh, if whatever we've done in our life, when we go to the Panch Pyare, and whether that's to take Amrit again or the first time, when we go to the Panch Pyare and we follow what the Panch Pyare say to us, to our final breath, then there's a 110% guarantee from Guru Gobind Singh Ji that you'll be mukt, you'll be liberated, you'll be forgiven. Like it comes in Gurbani, Pichhle Augan Baksale, Aage Marg Pave, that they forgive all my Pichle Augan, all my bad actions from the past, but I'll be Aage Marg Pave. They put me on the path going forward, right? So you'll either know if you're getting that state now, or in the next world you know, but if you follow what the Panch Pyare say, hopefully you're nothing to worry about, they take care of you. ठीक है?
Good teamwork going here, isn't it?
WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh.
So,
There's two things I want to say. There's one thing about forgiveness, right? And so like we have these sayings: what goes around comes around, and the energies that you give out, you reciprocate those energies back. So there's a slok that comes to mind from Bhagat Kabir Ji, right? forgive me if I make any mistake saying this slok. Jeh gyan teh dharam hai, jaha chhoot teh paap, taha lob teh kaal hai, jaha khima teh aap. Wherever there is forgiveness, there is WhyGuru Ji themselves. So not only WhyGuru is forgiving us, we need to be trying to forgive everyone else around us. And once we start practicing this virtue of forgiveness, you'll see within your own self how the prakash, the light of WhyGuru Ji comes from within. And I think sometimes we get a little bit too much caught up into that WhyGuru Ji is there and I am here. But actually, WhyGuru Ji is there as well, but they're also within you as well. And Khima, forgiveness, is one of the virtues of WhyGuru Ji. So practicing forgiveness, trying to forgive everyone, and remembering that we're just a little speck of dust in this universe, then we can't go wrong. Remembering that death is always over our head, I don't think we can not forgive anyone because of that. And another thing, it's a bit off topic, but it's about the killing of ants, right? A Sakhi came to my mind. There's a Mahapurush who told me this Sakhi just a few weeks ago. And I want to share it with you because it's quite interesting. So it's about an ant as well. And this Mahapurush, when he was younger, in his Amrit Sanchar, there was an ant crawling up his leg. And he felt this ant crawling up his leg. And when it got to his knee, he flicked the ant, yeah? And the ant fell on the floor, and it kind of split in two, and it died. And he felt so sad inside. He said, I'm here, I'm Amrit Sanchar, one of the most special days of my life, and I've gone and killed an ant. I've done such a bad sin. And right in front of him, he did ardas to WhyGuru Ji. Right in front of him, the two pieces of the ant joined together, and then it walked off. And the pankti that the Mahapurush said is, Sahib mera maar jivale. The same Guru who can kill, he can also give things life as well. So, sometimes things are in hukam of WhyGuru. So just want to add that, Saki. Forgive me for any mistakes. WhyGuru Ji ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji ki Fateh.
That was beautiful, man. Thank you so much. That was really amazing.
WhyGuru Ji ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji ki Fateh. Just on the point of how do we know if we've been forgiven? So I think there's a pankti, Jisnu Baksale hai mere. So, Jisnu Baksale hai pyare, so jasa tera gawe. So maybe that could be an indicator of if we're singing the praise of Guru Sahib, then that's an indication that they've forgiven us.
Was there a question over there? There's two questions.
Yeah, sorry, I just have a quick question. So say, for example, you take your last breath and you think of God, but you also think of your family, partner, and children. Would you still be reincarnated, but you're thinking of everything, including your home?
That's a good question, but I think when Guru talks about thinking about WhyGuru Ji, it's having your full focus on WhyGuru Ji, right? Because if I'm thinking about WhyGuru, a bit of my family, a bit of my house, a bit of this, then are we really truly focusing on WhyGuru Ji? Probably not, right? Whereas if we're completely focusing on WhyGuru Ji, I think that's what the Bhakti is really referring to, where our full focus is on WhyGuru Ji.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
So Hanji, what Vijay's saying is correct in terms of where your focus is. Can you just put the mic the other way, facing the other way? It's facing, that's going to give feedback. But what Vijay says is correct, right? But the thing is that karma is very complicated, right? Like even what Gurbani is saying is correct, but Gurbani is so deep, there's so many layers to it that we only understand from a surface level, right? So just to give an example of what you're saying in terms of we can think about God, but we can think about something else at the same time. This actually happens in history. When Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji was going out into the jungles, and a lion came in front of them, and the Emperor Jahangir, and the lion attacked, and then they chopped the lion, and the lion died, right? And then the ruh came out, right? Like I said, it's not called Atma, it's like the subtle body inside, right? And the Guru said to them, tell us your story. And he said very simply that I was an advisor for one of the emperors beforehand, called Akbar, right? And Akbar, they were doing Sangat of Guru Ramdas Ji, who is the fourth Guru. This is during the times of the sixth Guru, right? And they said that I would slander Guru Amar Das Ji, right? I would slander them so much, right? And what happened was that because of that slander, I'm keep cutting the story short, he had a really bad stomachache, right? He was eating meat and he had a very dodgy stomach because of the meat, right? and he was about to die because of that really bad, dodgy food poisoning. But at the same time, he remembered Guru Amar Das, and he said that, please forgive me. So now he remembered the Guru, but at the same time he's eating, I don't know, KFC. I don't know what he's having at the time. Probably not KFC. Bad joke, right? We get the idea, right? Yeah. And what happened was that he came back as a lion. But they had Sangat of Guru. Then they met Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji. When Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji killed them, they cut away that life. And then they gained liberation. Does that make sense? The reason I'm saying that is because these things are not that simple. And that's demonstrating that that's 2 in 1. Do you get what I mean? They remembered the Guru, but at the same time, they were eating something. But in that situation, who knows? Why? Maybe we come back in our family, but we come, because you remember the Guru, I'm just giving a hypothetical, this could be completely wrong, but it makes sense. We come back in another family, but it's a Guru Sikh family. Or we come back with more Sikhi principles now, where we're a bit more spiritual. Right? So it's inevitable. We don't know what it could be, right? But the main thing that Vijay is saying, that we'd hope in that last moment that our focus just is on WhyGuruji. And there are certain people at the end of their life, they'll say to their family, just let's keep some distance now. This is my time with God. Or they've accepted death, and they've accepted that WhyGuruji take care of their family, and now they're going to move on, because you've had so many families. So down to Dakkani Onkar Katha. Next week you'll carry on Kete Mat Pita Sutatiya. She says, I've been a mum so many times. Even us sings, right? We've been females many times as well. Mat, I've been a dad many times. Sut, I've been a child, a daughter. Kete Guru Chela Punuhua. I've been a guru, not like Satguru, but like as in I've been a leader. I've been a chela. So do you get what I mean? It's hopefully by that stage you realize that actually, you know what? This family, I love them, but I'm not attached to them. I know where I'm going home now, and hopefully they can come with me one day, but not because they're my family, because they're also souls as well that are yearning to go home. Does that make sense? A bit longer, but whenever it comes to these karma questions, got them very complicated. It's not just black and white. ठीक Hanji, Darshan ko.
Why is it that the lady with the parrot, the prostitute with the parrot, she was just saying Ram Ram Ram, and she got mukti, but then like there's people do bhakti for like years and years, like continuously, and then they also achieve mukti.
I think one aspect of that I was going to say is that she would have done it she did it with the innocent mind, right? She was genuinely asking, like, how do I get forgiven? Please tell me a way. Please bless me somehow. And all she heard that saint say was that, tell this parrot to say Ram Ram, and that is it. So she was doing it with just such a pure mind, so focused every morning without fail, Ram 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 Ram, without any tricks, without any cleverness, right? And so in that way, she received the mukti, right? She went to Sachkhand. Whereas, many of us, like, we may be thinking, I may be saying WhyGuru, WhyGuru, but I'm thinking I might be getting something good out of this, all these different things in our mind, right? Where she was in that position where she felt so low that when she asked to be blessed, she just followed it, like, without any questions.
Also, ants, they don't just die straight away sometimes. If you don't hit them too hard, they kind of like, because they have an exoskeleton, I think, they can move around and they can just like not die.
Thank you so much for that fun fact. Didn't know that.
I feel like she's trying to disprove on Carl Singh's story earlier by saying that. Okay, no, that's good. Again, what Vijay said earlier, that's correct. Just to add to, again, it's the same thing with the previous question. We can't start. Do you know what I mean? This idea of karma is such a broad topic, because fair enough, let's just say, for example, me and Guru Charan Singh, right? Now, let's just say, for example, I spend my whole life doing bhakti, right? 80 years. And he spends 8 days doing bhakti, right? Now, you'd say, right, that I'm more religious than him, right? But what about if the last 100 lives, he did bhakti and I did none? Does that make sense? So we're basing everything off one life and 80 years. But what about the billions of lives beforehand, right? Again, like I said, the fruits he got, or the stories that he told, the fruits that person got of whatever happened, like the eyes being blind, etc., etc., that was after 100 years. So something that we might gain in this life could be from 100 janams ago. What's going on downstairs? Second Ardas. That was so quick. Today we do Samapti early. Other time is at 9 o'clock or something. ठीक है जी. We will do Samapti. It's not going to happen. We still got to do Ardas su Khasandi Seva. Just tell them. Ji, we do Maharaji Seva in a bit. That's fine. We'll take more than 10 minutes anyway with Ardas and stuff. Is there another question? Who? Oh, Hanji, WhyGuru.
So when we get blessed with Amrit, we're forgiven for our sins. I just wanted to ask, is it only in this life or of all our lives before? Do we get forgiven for all of them or just this one?
So there's a lot of different... So everyone heard the question, right? How is it this life or the previous lives? I've had loads of things, right? And I think the most general answer is yes, all your lives. It's your Sanchit Karam. Right? Because again, the idea is that when we take Amrit, we're not coming back again. The Guru's given us mukti. Does that make sense? So whatever we've done in our past, all those lives, is washed away if we follow what the Panch Brothers say to us. And that sounds like, what does the Panch Brothers say? The Panch Brothers say, stay away from these things and do these things and get to the stage where every breath we say WhyGuru. Right? And that, then like we've heard like Ronvi Singh, there was a video that came out on Instagram with the haystack and it's all burnt away through Naam. It's all there, it's all in Gurbani, Guru Sikhs will say it and so on, but even just Gurbani says it, right? That Mitanta Sagala Simrant Haranam Nanak Jaise Pav Kast Pasman Kurod, that everything is burnt away like a fire in a big haystack. So, but again, it's that, right? And just to add to that, if we don't make it in this life, it's written in the Granth called Gurbani Part Darpan, that if in this life we're blessed with Amrit and we don't make it, we'll come back again. And they say it's written 10,000 janams that they'll give us that many chances, right? So hopefully we'll make it before 10,000, right? As a Guru Sikh, yeah? In the home of Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, right? But get the part of it that we won't do it the first time, yeah? So just, let's not mess it up. Fingers crossed. Theek hai ji. Anything else? Theek hai ji. Last question? Hanji Garan Singh. Karo kirpa. Oh.
I saw a video on basics that said...
Who's basics? Who's these lot?
Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so there was he basically WhyGuru Singh said that if someone that's been blessed with Amrit,
yeah,
but then they break it, we should stay away from that person.
Hanji.
Could you just elaborate on that? He said you could forgive them or like chill with them a little bit, but then really just stay away from them.
Again, when it comes to like that vichara, again, nothing is black and white, right? Every situation is different. So again, if somebody just breaks Amrit, if somebody turns their back on the Guru, so I give you the biggest kind of one, right? Turns their back on the Guru, they start to slander the Guru. Of course, we don't do their Sangat, right? Goodbye. See you later, right? That's that. And there's different types of Sangat we're not allowed to keep, right? Kurimar, somebody who kills their children, their daughter, because the mere fact that she's a girl, we're told we can never do their Sangat. Right? Different groups that have done India of the Guru in the past, we stay away from. So that's the most simplest answer, right? But again, things are not that simple. I'll give you one example, right? I knew a young singer, Munna, innocent, beautiful guy, man. And he came into Sikhi, but he had a really bad experience from Sikhs. Do you get what I mean? And they let him down, right? Really bad, and they turned their back on him. And because of that, he left Sikhi. And he cut his gears, and it was really sad to see, right? Still sad now, right? Now, would I turn my back on him? No. Do you get it? Because I know that actually that was our fault. That was my fault. I played a part in that as well. Maybe I could have done more, but it was Guru Sahib's hukam. But if I ever saw him again, I wouldn't blank him. I'd say to him, how you doing, bro? Because even Jagraj Singh, it's a small example. There was a young girl who used to come in the Sangat, and she was Munni. She didn't keep her hair. And she'd keep her hair, and then she'd find it hard, she'd cut it. She'd come back again. And we used to say to her, he said, just try again. Just try again. So same thing with those people. But my point there is that every situation is different. You can't judge everyone with the same, paint everyone with the same brush. But where we can, compassion is the first thing, right? As a Sikh, we should be trying to bring everybody back, right? That have fallen off, right? Because tomorrow, if I fall off, I pray to God that I never do. But if I do, I hope that the Sangat brings me back. You got what I mean, innit? So most of the times in these situations in today's world, people leave Sikhi because unfortunately something bad happens to them and they never got the support or whatever it could be, right? So we need to be there and support them, not just turn our backs on them, right? But what Bhai Sahib is saying is specific to a certain scenario. Is that okay?
Just to add to that, if we look at it from a practical perspective as well, like if someone, let's just say, they took the blessed Amrit and then they turned their back and they started, for example, let's just say they started smoking or they started drinking, for example, right? Now, if you're a Gursikh and you're trying to stay on that path of not doing those things, then would we really want to spend a lot of time with someone who's always going to be smoking or somebody who's always going to be drinking, right? It's not that we turn their back on them, but just for our own protection, if we know sometimes we've come from that path and we know that if we're spending so much time as natural, we start to take on their qualities, right? We just start to do that. I've experienced at university, different groups of people that I was hanging around with, I would naturally just start to like mold myself to them. In the same way, if we spend time with someone who's got certain qualities or maybe drinking or maybe smoking all the time, it may start to have an effect on us as well. So I guess it can be just more of a sign of protecting yourself rather than judging that person, right? You can still help them whilst you're speaking to them things.
Well, can I just say one quick thing? It's just Benji's question over there about your last moment saying WhyGuru. Realistically, if you're not practicing Simran every single day of your life, when it comes to your last moment, you're not going to remember WhyGuru. So let's not see it as a life hack that when it's our last breath, that we're going to remember WhyGuru, because your antkal, your last moment, could be now, or now, or now, right? And if you're not, who was remembering WhyGuru when I said now 3 times? Wait, okay. Look, so only Sukhdeep Singh would have got Mukti then, right? Oh, okay, WhyGuru, right. So that's the thing with that Shabad as well. It's not a life hack. It's by reading that Shabad, you should change your habits in your daily life so that when your last moment comes, you are remembering WhyGuru Ji. WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thanks so much, bro. You've had some lovely gems today. Thanks so much. Suggestions? Anybody else?
WhyGuru, thank you, Guru Charan Singh, for the great talk. Thank you for the great questions as well. That was really good, man. So hopefully we keep asking questions, right? Every single week, because I feel like we all learn, even myself as well. So we're going to do that. We're just going to do Salok, we'll do Ardas, Hukamnama Sahib, Sukhasindi Seva. Guru Sahib, you go to Sachkhand downstairs. It'll probably take us about 10 minutes anyway to do everything, and then we'll go down with Guru Sahib Ji as well. So I would highly recommend that everybody stays, and then afterwards we can all go with Guru Sahib to Sachkhand. ठीक है जी? Thank you so much. WhyGuru Ji Ka Khalsa, WhyGuru Ji Ki Fateh. Salok Pavan Guru Pani Pita Mata Tarat Mahat